morning and a warm welcome to the time Davos Hub. This is our last day of 4 days of broadcasting up on a mountain, and we're today inside the Arctic Base Camp tent. The other 3 days we've been broadcasting outside of the tent, but today it's actually snowing outside. And also we wanted to be inside to sort of showcase what the inside looks like in this Arctic Base Camp and tent. And people have been sleeping inside here. Scientists have, and they're also sleeping outside in smaller. So we're here today. We're going to start this session. We're going to focus on climate solution, exponential climate solutions. And we do that because it's crucial to put them in the forefront, to understand why we need them, and also to, of course, help them accelerate and then do this exponentially. And with me to talk about this, I have three guests. Two of them are with me here in the tent. Johan Falk, you're CEO of Exponential Roadmap Initiative, and also Andrea Webster, head of Finance Systems Transformation at the World Benchmarking Alliance. So terrific to have both of you here with us. And inside this, it's fairly warm, actually. It's fairly warm tent. And with me from Stockholm, we have Johan Mandaric Reunanen, and Johan is Climate Impact Lead at Stegra. And Johan will tell us a little bit later about what Stegra does, if you might not know what Stegra does. So starting with you, Johan, to introduce us to this topic and to this session, what is ERI and why have you decided to focus on solutions, climate solutions?
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. Thank you very much. Yes, the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. We bring together some of the leading and most disruptive companies in the world with this common mission to halve emissions by 2030 through exponential climate action and solutions. And we are an initiative anchored in science. We were set up 2017 based on the carbon law together with Johan Rockström that we need to cut emissions every decade. Now, we haven't yet bent the curve, even if we are quite close. One reason for that is to be able to shift out the fossil economy. We need to scale up the solutions and we need to scale them exponentially. And that is the reason why we can't just have focus on the down curves, but also on the up curves and how we can shift them to the left. So we need really laser focus on hyper growth of these climate solutions.
So Johan, please tell us a little about the framework and how does it connect to other standards and other frameworks?
Yeah. Now, what is important as far as we see it is that we can actually qualify these solutions in a good and independent way. And why is that? Well, they follow another rationale than the big companies. The big companies join, for example, the Science-Based Target Initiative and set the target to reduce their emissions. What is the difference? Well, these companies, they need to scale incredibly fast, growing 10, 100,000, etc., which actually means that over a period of time, they also need to raise their own emissions. So they don't really fit in that model. That is the reason why we developed this framework. It's called Climate Solutions Framework, together with Oxford, as well as methodology, basically, to be able to qualify such solutions. And to simplify it a bit, what does it really mean to qualify? Well, if we follow this curve of halving every decade, you should be at least 50% under that curve, preferably much lower. So we'll talk with Stegra later on. We'll have steel, which maybe cuts 90% compared to the market average. Then you can basically apply that rule. But it's also important that you follow what we call guardrails, that you actually follow a number of points in terms of your impact on nature and other aspects to really be keep a high integrity. So that's the ground.
Excellent, Johan. Thank you very much. Turning now to Andrea, could you tell us briefly a bit about what the World Benchmarking Alliance does, especially related to this topic of climate solutions?
Thank you. Can I just say it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Always wanted to go to the Arctics on my bucket list, so it's nice to be able to tick that off.
There you go.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. And what World Benchmarking Alliance does is very complementary to what Johan has just described. World Benchmark Alliance, we're a non-profit organization, we're independent, and we benchmark the top 2,000 companies and institutions that we think are critical for the system level change that's needed to support the type of change, obviously, that you're speaking to in terms of pushing that curve in the right direction. To put it into perspective, those 2,000 companies equate to their revenue equates to about a third of global GDP, and they employ directly up to nearly 100 million people and many more indirectly. So we know that if we can change the behavior of those, then that will drive system level change through. From a climate solutions perspective, we look at these companies through different lenses. We have 7 systems identified. We do have a track on decarbonisation and heavy industry. The track that I lead is on the finance system, actually, which kind of envelops all of them, because we know that finance is absolutely critical. It's the straitjacket of business and also the enabler of it. So the connection between finance and climate is critical. And I think key, just a point that you've made of these commitments that are made by businesses, basically what we do is assess them and see if they're doing what they say they're doing. We want to cheerlead the leaders, champion those best practices to scale them. And we do also want to be a critical friend to those that are laggards.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Andrea. Let's turn to Johan Mandaric Reunanen in Stockholm. You're in our studio in Stockholm. So Johan, please tell us about Stegra briefly, and also why you joined the work with the Exponential Roadmap Initiative with the climate solutions.
Sure, thank you. So, I mean, we got a bit of an introduction from Johan when it comes to Stegra, but I'll do the full version maybe. So Stegra was founded in 2020, and our purpose is to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. And we're starting with steel, as steel is one of the dirtiest industries out there, accounting for roughly 7 to 8% of the global emissions. And a bit over a year ago, we closed our financing for our first plant in Boden in northern Sweden. So it's a bit of an Arctic climate up there as well, which is currently under construction. And up there, we're building 3 pretty distinct technological platforms. It's green hydrogen, green iron, and green steel. And we will produce and deliver our first coils of green steel next year in 2026. And that steel will be able to reduce CO2 emissions up to 95% compared to conventional fossil steel. And an important part of the financing, we have pre-sold over 60% of the volumes from the Boden plants, really showing that it is possible to sell green steel in the market and get a green premium for those products. And some of you may know us as H2 Green Steel. We started off as H2 Green Steel, but we changed our name and our brand to really reflect a broader ambition to Stegra as of September last year. Because we won't only be selling green steel, we'll be selling green iron as well, and hopefully other applications of green hydrogen when it comes to decarbonization.
Thank you very much indeed, Johan, from Stockholm. Looked like you were here with us in Davos with that backdrop, but it's actually not. So turning now to, we're going to open up the discussion to all of us, but I'd like to just angle the first question to you, Johan Falk. We know we need to cut emissions dramatically, and you talk about exponential, well, also to bring out growth of scaling and acceleration. And what is the role of solutions in this mix, please?
Yeah, as I highlighted previously, a lot of, well, let's start with all the key chains. We talk about, food and land. We talk about transportation. We talk about mobility. We talk about energy. All these will be transformed. So we're talking about not just cutting emissions by 50%, but actually going to 90%, zero, going to regenerative should be the long term. So by the way, we shouldn't stop with net zero, but we should take it in steps. So that is the starting point. And that requires tremendous innovation, new type of solutions. So I think that dynamic between some of the larger companies and the new exponential solutions innovation companies is extremely important. And that is the reason why we're onboarding the combination of these, because they will be able to do the cut-throughs. You need to bring in a lot of new innovation in these value chains to make these radical shifts. And so far, I would also like to say that the focus has been very much on the energy transformation. And we know that all our big companies are working on push suppliers towards renewable energy and investing upstream in the value chain, potentially also downstream. That's reasonably well known, I would say. But where is the second part to be able to take the second and the third cut and halving is about materials to a large extent. So we need to have the same focus on going from a linear to a circular economy as well. So these are a number of major points why it's so incredibly important. And we need new actors to come into the value chains and really drive that change in combination with the most progressive big companies. I think the rest will disappear. I think we will shift out a lot of the current companies that we see on the market today.
Thank you very much, Johan.
Yeah.
Turning now to Johan in Stockholm. Stegra was one of the first companies that actually joined using the framework. Could you tell us a bit about why you did this?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess to start off, we have been members of Exponential Roadmap Initiative for a few years now, from pretty much the very beginning of the HRGS/Stegra journey, showing that we are part of Race to Zero. A lot of our investors were asking about SBTI. Why haven't you committed to SBTI? And we can't, because we're not in production, and we don't see the value for us in setting absolute emissions targets. And so we wanted to join Exponential Roadmap Initiative, but we didn't want to stay there only showing our commitments to, having our emissions every decade and reaching net zero in 2040. We wanted to show that our products from the very start are really challenging the status quo of the market, and they are needed for a lot of other companies out there, as Johan mentioned, to decarbonize, their supply chains. And a lot of our customers are big companies, these progressive big companies that Johan just mentioned. For example, the OEMs that are working hard to cut their emissions to reach their ambitious climate targets. And so one of the biggest drivers actually for our commercial offtake is SBTI, but since we can't fit into that framework, that would just hamper our development, really. We need to be able to scale exponentially. We wanted to be able to set intensity targets for our emissions. And so when we look at the climate solutions work with the minimum 50% reduction and the minimum of 90% of our revenues coming from those products, we see that, well, this is a great fit, because we will reduce emissions 90 to 95% from the steel, and that's the only thing that we sell. We only have green products in our product portfolio, so 100% of the revenues come from there. And of course, not to mention then the guardrails that do no significant harm. I don't know how many times this project has been scrutinized by our investors. We have a lot of critical friends, as you said, Andrea. I think that was a great way of putting it. And we chose to qualify as a climate solutions company to really hold ourselves accountable, to be part of advocating for a framework we really think is needed as a balance to SBTI if we're to collectively succeed with the transformation of these hard to abate industries, to decarbonize them. We need both worlds. And we also want to inspire other companies to walk the same path and set a new standard for green tech startups.
Well, thank you very much. We need front runners like you, like Stegra. Really, thank you. So turning now to Andrea, what is the importance of the framework and sort of the climate solutions definition? We have benchmarks and frameworks like CSF. what role do they play in this acceleration of investments? Because that's really your topic, the financing here.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe if I can provide a little bit of backstory for your viewers of what's happened and why those frameworks are important now. There's obviously the big push and the commitments that are made to net zero. And I think what happened originally is business and finance moved faster than the regulators. So you saw money pushing into products and companies raising money for climate solutions. There were some good players in there. There were those that were working it out as they went, and perhaps there were those that were less scrupulous. And so, it's the benefit of hindsight, but obviously that created all the angst that we've had over greenwashing. Yeah. Regulations caught up, as we now know. And so the whole industry, the business sector, investors are all kind of repositioning and maneuvering, and they need a common framework, a common anchor around. And in terms, I think, for investors, institutional investors in particular, there's a real commitment there to push money into climate solutions, but there is also a nervousness from a compliance perspective, and obviously the increasing risk of litigation, climate litigation, is significant. I'm also, there's one comment that I'm just going to throw in here, because I would like to bring the elephant in the room into this discussion. I think it would be remiss of us not to, as the politics. And we're here in Davos, the backdrop and headlines of the fact that they're going to have a rollback on commitments from climate solutions, and we have the net zero alliances that are either kind of disappearing or on pause. But what I hear across the senior management in the financial institutions is those commitments to getting money into climate solutions remains. And ourselves and the rest of the nonprofit will be supporting those institutions in doing so. So coming back to the need for frameworks, those are absolutely critical to give investors confidence that money is going into the right, pushing and having the right outcomes. I think it'd be really interesting, Tony, if we have time, to talk about the positioning and the narrative of those frameworks into the environment that we're going into to open up money for investors.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Sounds like you're slightly hopeful from the conversations here at WEF. Is that right?
I'm an eternal optimist, I have to
eternal
say.
Optimist.
That's why I get out of bed in the morning, because I believe there is a lot of work to be done. We've just benchmarked the top 400 financial institutions. So that's 150 banks, 90 asset owners, so sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, 90 asset managers, and 80 insurers. And the numbers on it are woeful on transition planning. We can see some positive numbers in terms of executive and board level commitment, so 60%. But in terms of transition planning, only 3% of those institutions actually have plans in place. And I think a lot of those they need the pathways and the frameworks to push forward on it. We will be pushing the industry. There's a lot to be done, but I hear commitment.
Excellent. So stay with you, Andrea. In terms of barriers to get more finance into the right direction, running into the right direction, what can you say about barriers? What do you need to do to remove them, and which are the major barriers?
Okay, there's not one answer to all of it. We know the funding. I think that the annual funding needs are estimated at $7 trillion a year for the climate transition. I've given this some thought. There's a lot of known barriers, obviously, in terms of the business model, cost. And then for me, the big one is the geography, where you're sitting in Stockholm in Sweden, you've got a supportive political backdrop for this, but the net zero race is going to be won and lost in emerging markets. I think that by 2030, half of energy use is in Asia. Those hard markets. So the big barriers is getting money into those markets. So some of the political willpower in there. We need businesses and those that have solutions to push governments to support really ambitious NDCs and advocacy to show that there are the innovation, their tools are available for those governments to show the commitment to push money into it. And we need institutional investors to get behind it as well. That's the kind of the big ones that spring to mind. But obviously, I think pushing that combination between the solution that Johan's talking about, pushing them through government and getting investment behind it.
Thank you, Andrea. Johan, Falk, what is your take on the barriers and also the connection to what you're doing to remove them?
Well, just to emphasize that the Exponential Roadmap Initiative companies, they stay on course. They stay on course. We have some turbulence now. Really important.
And just to note, how many companies is it now?
We have 60 or something like that.
Good to know.
It's a mix of bigger and small companies. We stay on course. That's incredibly important. It's important not to get distracted. Move forward. The transition will happen. So, but it requires a lot of more, smart collaboration between the parties in the front line. So two things to point out. The first thing is that around the narrative. Yes, it's much more now about business and solutions, and actually that these transition plans, which we're talking about and what we are working with all the big companies, the solution companies should also have a transition plan, but that is basically a growth plan within the guardrails, which not so many people have talked about, but that's basically the exponential growth plan. Could also be a transition plan. It's really important now to get the link to the nations and the cities we're working on and what you are working on.
Andrea mentioned the NDC.
Yeah, the national determined contributions, because we need to have the demand signals in terms of the right supply and demand policy, and make this into an opportunity for countries and cities, not primarily to cut emissions, but just primarily about winning the economy, because we shift out 90% of the economy. So it's a tremendous opportunity for the countries, for the cities in the front line. We have to move it from a discussion of, fulfilling the requirements on carbon towards actually winning the new economy. And that is why the solution companies are so important. So I prefer not to only talk about climate solutions. It could be exponential solutions, by the way.
Totally agree. Yeah. And if I could just respond to that. Obviously, we're relevant and we're talking about climate solutions in the context of this conversation. But, I think externally, and obviously you hear it in Davos, but actually when you're moving around emerging markets, that economic growth, prosperity for all. And I think climate solutions, that phrase doesn't resonate with many people outside of our world. And so that push of, is it energy efficiency to bring down cost of living? Is it it is prosperity for all in terms of the infrastructure and building resilient economies? And one of the points I think that when we talk about the technology solution, that the really important part for the narrative now is the just transition, because you're talking about changing an economy. There's an awful lot of people that are going to be frightened, that are going to be left behind. How do we bring that into the conversation to make sure that they feel part of it? And I'm interested where Johan's experience, because you're talking about there's an upskilling that's needed, and where does that fit in terms of job creation and the transition of the old economy to the new, and bringing that in, and that's complex.
We have a few more minutes left, so I want to hear what the Johan, Mandaric, Reunanen has to say about this.
Well, I guess when it comes to barriers, I think let's not create more barriers. I think, look at the EU. We have the ETS, which will put a price on carbon if we just follow the path that we've kind of staked out, with the phasing out of the free allowances and the phasing in of the carbon border adjustment mechanism. That will put a price on carbon for the conventional fossil steel. That price will go up, meaning that the cost difference between the brown and the green will not be that much. So it will be easier to sell these green products in the market. And I think we don't want to see any rollbacks on that. So we're hoping that it will stay the course with this commission, Ursula von der Leyen's second term. We really hope that they will.
Thank you very much, Johan. And Johan, Falk, just to conclude this session here, what's going to happen with this framework now? What are the next steps, please?
Yeah, we are working with a number of leading companies in the front line, such as Stegra, and a number of other companies to basically implement it practically. But we also broadening the discussion with finance and other factors. This framework is a key building block, but we also connecting it to other frameworks. So the key point is then to achieve a critical mass, as far as I see it, to basically drive this agenda forward, because we don't say that what we are doing is the absolutely right thing, but we put, in the new cornerstone. And we have a lot of fragmentation here. Each financial actor are applying their own assessment networks and so on. So we think to unify and to see how we can move forward. There will be a couple of frameworks in actually this acceleration, but these companies need a third-party validation of that they provide solutions, and also as a solutions company, that is very important. So we'll draw this together with our key actors. We also have a collaboration with World Benchmarking Alliance. That's one example. Yes.
Thank you very much, Johan. I have time for one more question to you, Andrea. What will be your focus in this field, 2025? What are your hopes?
My whole focus is on closing the funding gap for the transition, and working with leading financial institutions that can help channel money into it. We do have an emphasis on emerging markets, because I think that's the hard nut that we've got to crack, and perhaps using some of the experience that's taken place in Europe, taking that out into other regions. My hope is that the leaders in business and finance hold their nerve and unite and keep moving forwards despite some of the headwinds against them.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Andrea and Johan, and here in Davos, and Johan in Stockholm, for sharing your insights on this topic. And all of you watching this, please go into our platform, wouldn'thavetime.org. You can interact with other people that are interested in this topic and share your stories, and also, of course, share this broadcast to people that might need to know about what we talked about today. So now we're going to move on. The next session is going to be about it's going to be about a very special award that you might not have heard about before. So please stay with us, stay tuned, and see you soon. Thank you.